Welcome to the Four Visions Market Podcast, a space built on the principles of integrity and reciprocity. Together, we will engage in thought-provoking conversations about plant medicines, why these plants are coming out of the rainforests, jungles, and mountains after thousands of years, and what it means to be in right relationship with the ancestral wisdom cultures and guardians of these traditions. I'm your host, Mariah Ganessa, founder and director of Four Visions Market. This podcast is the natural evolution in our commitment to providing you, our tribe, with incredible resources to support you on your healing journey through plant medicines. Welcome home. Welcome back, Four Visions family. Thank you so much for tuning in to another exciting episode. I'm thrilled to welcome Yaya to our show today. Yaya Erin Rivera is a folk medicine practitioner specializing in sacred plant medicines for communication and relationship. A devotee, artist, and mother of primarily Taino and Irish descent, Yaya was raised on a 100-acre tree farm in rural Connecticut, where she was taught from a young age the importance of living in harmony with the natural world. Believing strongly in the necessity of hybrid medicine to meet the unique challenges of modern mestiza life, Yaya Erin is engaged in the continued study of plant medicines, active dreaming, relationship sciences, nutrition, and goddess traditions from around the world as pathways to responsible, creative, liberated embodiment. Yaya Erin's offerings flower from an abiding belief in our capacity as human beings to steward and share beneficial culture based on health, creativity, reciprocity, kindness, compassion, celebration, and service to Gaia. Welcome, sister. It's an honor and a privilege to welcome you to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for the invitation.
I've been following your journey for a few years now, and I love to just connect with strong women who are walking their path with courage and devotion. So it's always a special thing to get to drop in this way and connect in a more physical way than just observing from afar on the social media world. So welcome. I'm excited to learn more about you. And with that, would you please introduce yourself to us and share a little bit of your origin story and who you are and how you came to be here walking your path today?
I can share the story a lot, but in my mind, when I think about who I am, it's hard to know where to start. I'm definitely here in this lifetime to do motherline work. And so I really experience myself as a continuation of my motherline and everything unfolding in this like spectrum that, has my great, great, great grandmother on one end and like me on the other end. And it's really hard to differentiate. And, for some people, it's really important to differentiate because like their mental health depends on it if there was like a lot of unwellness in their family. But there was a lot of unwellness in my family. And yet I've found that it doesn't resonate with me to draw a hard line and say, that's yours and this is mine. It's just not honest for me. It's not how I experience it. Of Puerto Rican descent, and everyone in my motherline is born in Calle, Puerto Rico, except for my sister and I. And that's heavy. It just feels like a lot to be here and be seen as of here. And I don't have an accent. I only speak Spanglish. I went to college. All these things. And a lot of people just see those things and they're like, that's who you are. And that's the only box I'm comfortable interacting with you in and from. And I had a lot of trouble making sense of the way I was seen or treated and the way that I felt inside and experienced myself and, how I grew up and like what the flavors and tones of that upbringing were. And I've heard something recently, I wish I could remember who said this quote, but they're saying something about like, I know I'm an American because when I walk into a room, something dies, and I'm not sure what context they were using it in, but like, I really felt seen by that is, that it was like, I think I'm expressing myself, but because of the sounds and tones that my voice evokes, the assumptions come, the projections come, and that's it. That's, um, what people want from me, or what they're picking up of what I'm putting down. And so it actually took me a pretty long time to realize like, I need to be around other Latinx people to be seen and heard because many of them are grappling with it. They're here in North America, they're grappling with the same experience. And so there's just a very particular kind of mixed experience is neither validated or celebrated by the European side of my family or the Puerto Rican side of my family. Is actually finding like other mixed people to be in, and mixed communities and affinity groups to be like the spaces where like the full spectrum of my flavors is heard, seen, understood. So I think what I want to say right now is that I feel like a kaleidoscope inside that is either really awesome when you're looking for like transformation and change, and something can just a tiny micro movement can change the whole picture, um, or really terrifying if you're, and upsetting if you're like trying to stabilize your ship, not looking for a life-changing adventure in this moment. Yeah, and I mean, that can get way more specific if that interests you, but, I'm kind of an abstract person.
I love that. That's a beautiful place to start. And I think that it's very relatable, especially here in North America, where so many of us are a melting pot and we carry different backgrounds and lineages and ancestries. And this journey of finding ourselves not defined by anyone else's expectations, even our own families on one side or the other, and being able to connect with the fullest expression of who we are beyond the constraints of any box or any clear, fine definitions. And before we were starting this conversation, we were talking a little bit before of like how even at different phases of your life, you've shown up in different ways and you've been a different woman, and to give ourselves permission to change and to be different things in different moments in our lives. Could you speak a little bit more about that?
Well, yeah, so I think that I can kind of pick up where I left off in the sense that like the person that's the most confused and terrified by the ever-changing landscape of me is probably me.
Hmm.
And like this morning, I was laying in bed and just trying to name the feeling, and like that's been like really present in this phase of my life, like my 40s, that just wasn't there before. And uh and it was like terror. That it's just like everything is so raw and so consequential, and you know we're all having a lot of unmet needs, and my work is being in like spaces of presence with other human beings, and there's no avoiding the like immediacy. I was just thinking about this bag my sister gave me that was like different astrological signs, and it was like for Aries, and it was like in French, but it said something about like have courage or whatever. And I've just never felt like, oh, like I have to have courage or I'm brave or I don't get that. But just this morning, I was like, oh, well, I mean, I guess I'm brave because I'm terrified all the time, but I'm still doing all these things that are really important to me. So maybe that's what that word means. And like what they mean when they're saying Aries, the Aries seem brave, but it's like on the inside, Aries feel um, compelled by forces beyond our power to move forward or step into the unknown.
I really resonate with that because I think I get reflected a lot of, wow, you're doing so much, you've accomplished so much, blah, 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 right? and then I'm asked like how I have the courage to do all of it.
Mhm.
And the reality is like I'm scared
not courage.
shitless half the
Yeah.
time, right? I'm just like breathing my way through it and, you know, walking one foot in front of the other. And somehow have found myself here and there's so much more to go. And how to walk this human experience for continuing to move forward and catalyze our energy forward in that place of transmutation and transformation and service, honoring the full spectrum of what it means to be human.
I love that just phrase, even like full spectrum, like anywhere you want to stick it, like full spectrum doula, full spectrum sexuality, you know, like just, it's just yes.
Mm-hmm. So, what are the tools that you use? What are the tools that you resource yourself with to walk your walk?
It's interesting. I spent a lot of time in ceremony with other women, which was a prayer, 20 years ago. I was just like, oh, I'm my best self in this space. And everything makes sense. So I just want to spend like as much time here as is healthy for a person to do while like being alive. And so I get things reflected back to me, and like something that's reflected back to me a lot in that space is like, oh, you were like this old grandmother, then grandfather, like, or like, you were like the maypole and the ribbons weaving around yourself, and all these really beautiful things that to me are like speak to sovereignty. And that has been super difficult, like I'm a petite woman. Um, Physical health is not run in my mother line. Um, Being, not just interdependent, but like really dependent on my family, and like feeling like a burden, and all of those things have loomed large in my journey. And my maiden self is just like a stuffed possum, it's just like wants to curl up in everyone's lap and be like, look at my belly, and then like that's not um the doesn't feel appropriate like most of the time in my life. And I feel like I'm really right in the middle of my um or toward the end really of my motherhood journey. I'm in perimenopause. But I've been in the mother seat for a while, and like there's a grind to that, as much as people want to celebrate it because it's wonderful, and we should. There's When I talk to other mothers who've been doing it for a while, there's an element of like, here's this laundry list of things that aren't working. And, some 20-year-old might be like, it's just your mindset. If you can believe it, you can achieve it. You need some affirmations or whatever. And it's like, well, you need to have a baby and then we can talk, because there's this rewiring of your root chakra. And I learned something in a course that I'm taking with my teacher called Feeding the Light Body. Where a lot of it is things like, quote, already know, but like beginner's mind's really important. And I love to take classes over and over again and like glean new gems. And the gem that I got out of the red light body spectrum is that there's no psychic center in the root chakra. I was just like, that phrase just like resounded through my universe of like it seems like explain like my experience of pregnancy, my experience of my birth, my experience of motherhood is that it's like something that just took me from the cosmos and was like, you live here because there's this other person that you invited here, so you better be there when they need you. And that was not a especially developed aspect of my auric field or mother line, or I think anybody that comes from people who experienced a genocide, that was the point, is to cut you from the root, cut you from your roots, cut you from the ability to like take away your tools that you use to like pound things and dig for roots and all of those things, like on so many levels. So it's like I will go ahead and just say that wasn't like just, oh, I hadn't got to that point of developing my root chakra on my soul's journey, and I'm doing that in this life. It's like, oh no, we got there, and that was severed. And I'm on like team reweave and rebuild. So there's so much of my life that feels so grindy and so mundane, and it would shock people because I also from a very psychic family. So it's like, if I decide to tune in, I can tune into a very deep place. And then people are like, oh, you just live there. You're so lucky. You know, you have this like connection and you can just pull from it and know whatever you need to know. And it's just like, I can't live in that state of openness. I need to do that in a container and through ritual and open and close. And then the rest of the time, this, motherhood phase has been very much just about knowing the root chakra in every which way, and all of its auspicious properties and aspects, and all of its afflicted and obstructed aspects, and coming to understand what the energy is that's required to be fully manifest in this life. So that's where I've been at. And, little twinklings of the crone come online, which is just like, I love my inner crone, She's dry and spicy and just like so clear. I'm like, this is a service lifetime, my personality cares about everything very deeply. And my crone is like, I don't care about anything except my contract, which is like to serve God and serve people that on their journey to like evolve really in this life, for people who want to evolve in this life. And so it's like anything else that comes in or tries to like steal an audience with my inner wise woman, they're just like not having it. It's just like when I was younger, I got myself into a lot of trouble just through being like very open, very longing for like a deep connection with people, because my connection is very innate with nature and the divine, and then with people it's been kind of fraught. I've needed to learn a lot of practical things. So all that's to say, I think my inner crone kind of cues up the curriculum for what tools I need to learn, and they're usually not the exciting, cool ones. They're like, and so to go back to the beginning of my answer to this question of that like sovereignty, or like the maypole and the ribbons, it's like that's Shiva Shakti. And, so for me, the invitation is not to just be like Shakti embodied, but to be Shiva Shakti embodied, to be like fully developed in both my masculine and feminine nature. And if the language doesn't work for you, that's totally cool. It's just like my structure and my flow, and that like to be a mother, to have a business, to keep my body like even at baseline functioning, I have to be very much in that structured part of me, which is the weaker part, So it's like I have to develop and cleave to and kind of romanticize and mythologize like the mundane and the structures that support the magic. And so that is why a lot of people really see me or know me like through like hedge witchery, because that's like the definition of hedge witchery, is like finding the magic in the mundane. And I have to. I'm like a little skinless cosmic noodle inside. But for whatever reason, they put me in this, whole circus in this lifetime. And so, the tools are a lot of what I'm teaching in the apprenticeship, is because I know I'm not the only one. I know there's like a whole mess of us that are this kind of way. And I just find a lot of the human realm incomprehensible. So, if I've been supported by spirit to seek out these like very effective tools, then like taking the years to integrate them and overcome the challenges in integrating them, then that's something that I can help other people do in a really authentic way. So, the pillars of the apprenticeship are kind of like, food, plants, movement, stillness, sound, silence. And, there's tools within each of those categories. But it's like, if there's one that, I got to just like for the rest of my life and nothing else, it would be bone broth. It's just like everything goes in the cauldron, and the cauldron turns it into something your body can use for everything.
Beautiful. I love that. I'm really enjoying listening to you. You are very abstract. It's like we just went to a lot of different places, but I'm here. I'm on the canoe with you.
Thank you. I'm glad it's a canoe.
Wow. Okay, cool. So we got it. We got the maiden, we got the mother, we got the crone, we got the bone broth, and this beautiful sovereignty and coming back into our service and this subtle art of not giving a fuck and not caring what people think and not caring so much about what it looks like and just walking the path. And so with this connection with your crone, I loved hearing you talk a little bit about like how you feel her coming more and more now that you're in your 40s and in this beautiful moment of perimenopause. How do you balance this wisdom that's coming, this like clarity, this vigilance, this like such rooted truth with the part of you that still doubts and the part of you that's still in that phase of the grind and of the struggle?
I think it's in my astrology and my numerology and everything. Um, I like a lot of the less technical tools. So, for example, Vedic astrology is like, there could be like a constellation with 12 stars that we can see that make up the Dipper or the, you know, bird or whatever we're saying it is. But if you use a more powerful microscope, there might be like 150 stars in there. And that our Western astrology is like, okay, you're somewhere near that bird. And then Vedic astrology is like, it's this star. And I have gotten so much out of receiving from people who have that kind of like mastery of something really specific where there's like a right and a wrong way, like you either are this star or you're this other star, and they're not, there's no middle ground. But I find that my brain can get going so fast that it like short circuits, and it's not good for me. And so a lot of the things that I'm doing are like slowing down and choosing a tool that will get me the same guidance in a really folksy, simple way. This process of simplifying myself, like my innate complexities, and say, you know what, I don't need to like do cycle tracking anymore. I can just look at what color of flowers are growing on the land and know what time it is. And things like that. That seems like a way that I can honor that I can feel and can hear the crone wisdom coming through. Um, and that I I live in my personality for a significant part of the day. Um, and so I don't really think there is a balancing without practices. So it's like there's tools and there's practices. Um, and they go together, but they're not the same. And so it can be really exciting to like go get the tool. Um, but actually what we share in our program is a lot of tools where it's like there's no object to put on your altar and be like, "I learned to use that. I have it now." Like, it's you have to do it, you know? Like, you have to go to the store and get the carrots and get the onions and make the broth. Like, knowing how to make the broth or knowing how to tell someone else that they need bone broth, like, has no value. Um, and so, for me, like, deciding I needed a daily practice didn't come till my mid-30s. Um, and I'm 42 now, but that was a pretty big turning point in my life. It's
Mhm.
just, you know, the word discipline I was always pretty allergic to, just like having a father in a domination kind of model and living in a patriarchal society, it just has all these connotations. But like for me, it didn't come until, like, my devotion for something was just, like, tearing me apart inside, like, it needed somewhere to go, and so I, like, gave direction to, like, what kind of a daily practice, and it was really, like, just a sort of realization of, like, it's always been about the goddess, so, like, how do I do that? Like, what's something that I can do to express this extreme devotion that I feel. And so I sought out, I think I was kind of just calling in something. And what came in was a teacher in the Shakta Kaula and Sri Vidya lineages of Tantra. And that was the first daily practice that I had, was with a mantra that was a living mantra that's empowered by the teacher, that's in the lineage, that's been passed in the oral tradition, and, has to be activated through a ritual and then passed to you. And then you can't share it and you can't do it out loud in front of other people. It's a very personal thing between you and the goddess, but it's like such a long story of all the different amazing, strange things that happen when I'm in those sadhanas. But like, all of that aside, just deciding to make space to sit down and do a practice every day that like doesn't have any immediate rewards at all, and you can't like show it off. Um, was really good for me. And so that's shifted over the years because I've been called to work with teachers with that where there was just counterindications, like you don't do yoga when you do these practices, or, like you're if you're going to do this program, you're going to just do this program for this period of time. And, those things continue to call to me that were closer to my own lineage and closer to the part of the world where my family has traditionally called home. But it's like there has been no going back from like carving out that space for something daily. And then it's like I am free to decide which of the tools in my basket is like most important right now. And for the last few years, a lot of that has been cardio. And like my teacher was like, "Oh, so what mantra are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm mostly doing Durga mantra on the elliptical machine," And I'm just like, this is so painful and difficult. If I don't do it, I won't be able to walk anymore. Goddess, please give me the strength to just figure out what is happening and do what needs to be done, to meet the challenges, whatever they are. Yeah, I do remember why I brought up the thing about astrology is that it is in my chart, like in Western, in Vedic, in numerology, that I don't have like a personality card and a soul card. I just have a soul card. It's the same. And it means like you're here in this life to do soul work. And like I reference this a lot because it just explains a lot to me. And so it's like I'm really grateful to have that like astrological support for this strong connection to like future me, because I think that that's where actually a lot of like my teachings come from too. And then people are like, "Oh, like I want to hang out with you. You're just like this really like rad thing all the time." And it's like, no, I'm mostly like exercising, grocery shopping, and sleeping when I'm not like, you know, on. But I also, what I always feel like is when I'm teaching, that I am in the class too. Like me, Erin, my personality is sitting in the class too and getting to learn from like Crone Yaya, and just like take notes too. Sometimes I'm like, oh, that was good. Like I should really remember that more often.
Wow, that's so beautiful. I love all of that. And it's so real, just the everyday. How do we bring the sacred into the everyday? Durga mantra on the elliptical. I think I'm going to name this podcast episode that.
I love it.
So real.
Because it's just so, that's been like, I don't know. I don't hear other people like referencing 2020 every time they open their mouth. But like, for me, it's this real thing that happened to all of us that nobody's dealt with yet. So I can't really talk without talking about it. But it's like this phase of my life that started in 2020 could also be named that.
Yeah, big year initiation for so many of us. And I love this element of the teacher, and how your accessing of your crone is a guiding light, not just for those who get to receive, but for you as well. And I'm very curious about this because it's something that's been present for me. I'm a little younger, but as far as stepping into that role of a teacher is like a fundamental part of my own journey that I know is ahead of me, that I have to do in order to embody the fullest potential of my being. And so I am very curious, because you've been teaching for many years and through many different phases and chapters of your life, how you navigate this element of the teacher, and the guide, and do it from a place of authenticity, riding the waves of our own humanness and all of the different things that are always going on in our reality. And so I'm just feeling called to hear you speak a little bit on that, specifically, this element of showing up and putting ourselves out there as a guiding light, and as someone who can help and inspire others to navigate. But how you balance that with your own inner processes, and this feeling of being seen, and also perhaps misunderstood at times, if you maybe fall off the pedestal that people maybe put you on without you even asking to be put there.
I was a little allergic to like the term teacher for like a long time, even if people would say, "Oh, you're my teacher," in like a really respectful way, who like had sat in all my classes. Um, I, I didn't like it, and then I learned like certain people, like my one of my closest practice sisters, if she would say it, it would always be like in the depths of ceremony in such a sincere way. And I was like, well, she's allowed to say it, but it's sort of like a nickname. Like it doesn't feel good for somebody that you don't know to call you by a pet name. There's like a really deep trust there of like, I'm not putting a label on you. I'm not putting you in a box. This is just like what my heart is feeling in this moment. And then I could receive that. Um, and then, you know, it's like I swing between extremes in, like, how I feel about things, and as I'm, like, processing the full spectrum of, like, how I could feel about them, and I had to accept after, like, lots of, like, "Don't put me in a box, don't put me on a pedestal," like, I'm just, like, one it's just us here, like, sharing stuff, um, but then I have had to, like, own that, like, I did go to college for education. And, it took like child and adolescent psychology, and like studied a lot of different things in like the realm of the psychology of developing people, and like pedagogy, and the science of making information like transferable. Uh, and like the beginnings of my teaching was in the Acorn Community High School in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. At the time, it was the second worst ranked school in the five boroughs, not because it was an Acorn school, it was already that. And the Acorn school came in to bring social justice to this population. Um, and after that was in Rikers Island, like maximum security men's prison. So, like, um, it's not a title that I've like taken lightly. It's like there's not another way for me to make enough money to live. And so if I try other things, like there's no timeline there. I have tried a lot of other things. And this is like when I just kind of come back to like, well, like what if I don't have to do it in a classroom where people hit people in the face with chairs, or what if I don't have to like pass through security checkpoints and like be afraid that there might be a riot that day, like to go to work. Like what if I can set the context and the frame, and like even what it is that we're gonna talk about. So that's been like the journey of like my entire adult life, maybe more than 16 years of just figuring out like where the choice is, um and how much I want to how much I can stand to be seen. Um, and so I think in terms of balancing, um, it really give myself a lot of permission to be like mutable, and be like, today let's all strip naked and tell each other our worst fears, and then like the next day be like, like someone's like, oh, show us what you're cooking for dinner. And I'm like, no, that's private, like just to be moody, and allow my moods, and just like not nothing but my own sense of like what feels comfortable today. So sometimes I share like wildly personal things, and then I go through long periods of time where I feel pissy, let's say, about sharing. And like, I in my head, I'm just like in my most contracted state, I'm just like, that's so entitled, you know? You think you just feel entitled to like know what I'm thinking or what I'm doing right now. But it's like, no, there's nobody out there that's like banging down my door. It's just a dynamic, Um, and I don't try to control these dynamics so much because it doesn't work. I used to, and it didn't work. I try to flow with it. And usually when I'm feeling like physically unwell, or like really drained and dried up, because that happens. You can like share a lot or do a big thing that is really important. It's like after birth where you're just like, my hair is falling out, um, energetically. And so when I'm in that state, I just disappear because like it's also like I set the frame, I set the context, I set the terms of all of this. Also because I was told I have to, like it was also in my Vedic chart that's like there's no place for you in this world. If you want a place for yourself, you're gonna have to make it. And that kind of lit a fire under my ass to kind of do some of that harder work to set up the structures. And then, you know, if I don't feel like it, I just disappear for a while. And so if I disappear for a while, just know that like I'm exhausted, I'm dried up, and I'm filling my cup so that I can come back because I do really love the work that I do.
Taking a quick break from today's conversation to share with you a short message, let's talk about plant medicine integration. Integration work is the action taking and the grounding into the fibers of our beings, the ancestral and cosmic wisdom that the plants give us. It is the manifestation of every vision. When we do it well, it becomes the true ceremony, the ceremony of life. The 4 Visions Plant Medicine Integration Program was created to support you in learning how to cultivate the unique process of translating the healing and wisdom received from the plants into your daily life. Our personalized, self-paced learning platform was developed to suit each person's unique availability and commitment levels, with as much hands-on guidance and support or autonomy as you are needing and wanting. Our in-depth curriculum is comprised of a robust digital content series, live monthly workshops, private spiritual consultations, and community connection. Our faculty is made up of renowned spiritual teachers, indigenous wisdom keepers, and integration specialists, each with unique backgrounds and decades working with the plants. We created the curriculum we wish we had had years ago when beginning our plant medicine journeys. Some of the topics we cover throughout the program are immediate integration basics, cultivating your spiritual practice, building a plant allies toolkit, how to make spiritual payments, how to deepen your connection with plants, working with Hape, Sananga, and cacao as allies, the foundations of microdosing, the art of forgiveness and reconciliation, spiritual hygiene, and plant diets. If you feel called to cultivate your integration practice or are interested in nourishing your spiritual studies and deepening your relationship with plants through a one-of-a-kind transformational container, we welcome you to visit 4visionsintegration.com to learn more and sign up. And now back to today's show. And when you go into those places, are you fully at peace with this need to retreat, or do you find yourself like in a place of judgment or frustration? Like, how do you navigate this experience of being human and being a woman too, right? And our natural ebbs and flows.
I think in a vacuum, I'd feel really like just at peace with it. Like everything that I'm teaching is about like being cyclical creatures. So it's like if you're listening to me, then, if I'm feeling exhausted, it's probably because it's like, the season and you're probably feeling that way too. And, we can all just take a nap. But definitely I live in the world. What I mean by that is like, I'm not immune to all of the programming and all of the pressure that is like grabbing at our energy all the time and like trying to implant these fears around, that keep us from feeling surrendered to the flow of life. And so, it's a very mundane kind of program, but just like, oh, like if I don't keep consistently posting, or if like there was a minute of momentum and I don't like keep pushing the rock up the hill with that momentum, then, everyone's just going to forget about me, and there will be no dollars that come in this month, because it's like there's no dollars that come in if I don't do stuff, So just trying to also, it's actually getting, for me, the peace comes from just getting comfortable with like the ebbs and flows of money also. Because it's like, yes, I would feel way more at peace with my rhythms if I had a consistent source of income that was nurturing me, whether I was producing or resting. That would be wonderful. I'm not there yet. It would be super cool if that happened, but it doesn't feel like anything in nature is that consistent,
Mhm.
I think we're meant to be kind of stay nimble and stay on our toes and keep our tools sharp, and
Mm.
be engaged with our environment. And so I kind of have learned, I think it would probably really upset people if they knew the degree to which I've learned to like just pretend that certain like financial realities aren't there, and just do it, like tune in with myself, ask myself what I really need. A lot of the time it's like I just need to go to bed. Like right now, 7 p.m. or whatever. I promised somebody I would send out that newsletter, and just being like, I'm gonna have to tell them that I'm having a flare up and I need to go to bed, and I will do it tomorrow, like and so it's like that's what I do pretty much all the time now. It's like I do my best. I let go of the rest to probably a dangerous degree by anybody's definition that is trying to teach financial literacy or responsibility.
It's this crazy world that we're living in of being spiritual beings in this physical form and having to navigate this economy and financial living and what we need to put food on our tables and feed our children and get them clothes. And it's just very real. And the stresses and the pressures that we all live and deal with, it's like the amount of stress on our adrenals and on our nervous systems. It's like, I think to a certain extent, of course, like animals in nature are under stress, right? But then there's this whole other element of like the societal pressures and the expectations and the rat race where we fall into this trap of, hustle culture and push, push, push. And so this return back into honoring our needs and honoring our body and honoring our capacity in any given moment. It's a study, it's like, and when we can do it, I mean, when we don't send out that newsletter or we just say, you know what, it's just not going to get done today. Like those are moments of empowerment. At least they have been for
Yeah.
me, they've been like moments of really listening, really honoring my own needs. And there's so much strength that we receive from those moments. So I think there's always a tremendous amount of power in that.
Yeah, I will say too, like after like the really super kind of practical nitty gritty, like sure that like on the magical side, I'm very open to receiving gifts, and so it's like kind of goes to what I was saying about like we try to like lock stuff in, jobs and consistency and or a certain like pay grade or whatever. Like I gotta lock it in and then I can relax, and it's just like well, you know, life moves in these ebbs and flows. I'm trying to like stay relaxed in the ups and downs
Mm-hmm.
as because that seems like what I'm being asked to learn. Um, but within that, I think that it's just in my aura that I'm open to receiving gifts, and I do get gifted insanely supportive things,
Mm.
So you know, it kind of fits with some of the goddesses that I work with, especially Bridget from my Irish side. Is like, I don't think I ever read this anywhere in all of her beautiful poems and things. It just came directly in a transmission, like during a in bulk community celebration. I just heard her be like, "Do you believe in miracles?" And that
Mm.
was like, she just like left me with that as like, this is this is what I want you to understand is like miracles are real. And, ever since that time, I have felt like, spirit lets me like fall all the way off the cliff and like splat at the bottom even, but like then miracles do come that keep me alive and keep me going or like bridge the gap to between like what I can physically do and figure out and the vision, you know? So that's definitely like an equal component in the recipe for me.
Mhm. Mhm. Mm. Beautiful. Well, I feel like that's a really nice transition to this element of devotion and relationship with nature. And so, I think one of the primary themes that we touch on in this podcast is relationship with nature as part of a relationship with self. And many of the people who listen to this podcast are coming to us through our platform of ethically sourced plant medicines. And ultimately, that's one portal of relationship with nature and self. And one of the things I'm really loving getting to do on this show and engaging in these beautiful conversations with medicine people from all different paths and walks is touching on all the many different facets of ways in which we can deepen our relationship to nature and our relationship to land and our relationship to the spirit of creation. And so I would love to maybe segue the conversation here and get to go into the depths of understanding maybe a little bit about your journey with spirit, your journey. I know that you mentioned your ancestral line has played a fundamental part in awakening that connection to your intuition and to your channel of wisdom and divine guidance. And maybe you could start by sharing a little bit of what the evolution of your spiritual path has been like for you, and then we can take it wherever you want to take it. But I always love to hear, especially from people who work with the plants and people who work with nature in an intimate way, um, many different gems and jewels of wisdom that are applicable for people who are tuning in and listening, simple ways, accessible ways in which we can start to live more closely with that which we are a part of.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that it's unique to me that like I had some really good raw materials from both sides of my family. And there's lots of caca in there too, but it's like sifting, I think is important. And not just trying to dump the whole thing. But of course, in my teens, I was definitely about that, like just getting out of there, we lived in a really, really rural area and we'd get woken up really early in the morning to like do things like shovel snow and go get loads of firewood and like stack them outside for the wood stove. And, all of that was just hell as a kid because we were very aware that other kids weren't doing these things and didn't have to do these things.
Mhm.
Um, but hilariously enough, like that I'm in a very full circle moment of my life where I'm like, no, all those things were the good things.
Mhm.
That was all like more than character building. Like it made me a human being and I'm super grateful. I think my first like spiritual kind of inklings were definitely through my connection with my mother. That just the world was didn't understand me and I didn't understand the world. And then there was this person who like always understood me. And I felt, always I never remember feeling like they were annoyed with me or I did something wrong or there's just such a like simpatico understanding there. And, as much as the English wasn't her first language and she was in, a really different family structure and culture, still somehow she managed to protect like navigated enough to protect me and guide me in the ways that were important to like my spirit. And my mother's an artist and so I felt like she like showed me how to do a lot of different kinds of art and we spent a lot of time making art together. Um, and, then my dad was, doing performing arts and cooking, and so, the singing and then, like, cooking and baking, that all comes from my dad, but we just didn't have that closeness. Um, and we did go to a Congregationalist Christian church, which I think is, like, the best thing that could happen to you if like Christianity must be a part of your journey, because like what makes a congregationalist church, like the belief is that anytime that a group is coming together like it as a community in the name of God, then like you're doing the thing. And so it's like the whole focus of the church. I never heard the word hell. There was no talk about like rewards and punishment, and everything was really focused on, choirs, plays, community service, and so um, it was a place where I could go and sing and get the solo in the choir in combat boots and a pentagram necklace and like a black gauzy dress. No one said a word. No one ever implied that like those choices or explorations of mine made me anything less in the eyes of God or that community. Like that was always just treated like the person I'd always been treated as. So I had a really positive experience of that. And I do think it's kind of foundational to the forms of Tantra that I found to practice that are like, um, they're older, um, less doctrinal forms where they're kind of like where when women didn't want to get married and they thought there was something else for them and they would like run away from society to live in the woods with other women and like train parrots and make beaded headdresses and do different dances, and all these different things were considered like the the sermon or the scripture, like the behaviors of the community when you just form a circle and start singing or so that sort of thing that channels through. Um i i think that I think it's the same thing. I think congregationalist Christianity is a form of Tantra that's like comprehensible to the Western mind. And I felt it, and so some of my like understanding of like the spirit of healthy community, I think came from there, where that spirit was present for a time, and then they had some changes. People died. They tried to bring in other people. They couldn't replace them. Whole generations went off to college. Whatever. Churches get less funding. So it's like there was a time, but it was a time when like my family was young and growing up. So I think that made like spirituality um as like tied to creative expression like part of the foundation of my life. And then I went through a super materialistic, angry, depressed, rebellious, unhealthy time in my teens. And I think looking back that a lot of it was like hormones dysregulating some latent mental health traits that run in the family, but it was just like I was on fire to get out of there and move to New York City and like middle fingers blazing to everything. And it was all bad or whatever. But then I did leave New York City after 10 years to move into an earth ship, had my baby in an earth ship. And, just toward the end of being in New York City, starting to do women's circles. And just that was also like the beginning of just being like, I got stuff inside of me. Like, I'm going to classes, I'm reading books, like, I'm digesting lots of stuff. But, like, then there's just what happens when a group of women sits in my living room. And that's the most interesting thing. And so that has maybe informed, like, if I had to divide my life into two sections of just being like kind of like normal and not normal, but, tormented and rebelling in the normal ways. And then like the beginnings of empowerment were like leaving New York City, like wanting to live like a hobbit and being like, yeah, you know what? Like I like weird clothes and weird hairdos and stuff, but you know what I like even more? Just like talking to cacti in the desert by myself.
Mhm.
Lots of different phases of this life, but I came into stewardship of land again in 2020, and that's what's really made the full circle, where I'm like, oh yeah, this waking up and hauling wood and um, just dealing with super practical stuff like plants and the well and whatever, like that's what feels most natural to me. That is how I grew up. I tasted all the other flavors, but this is my jam. And it would be really cool if I could do less of like the urban contemporary stuff, like, now and until I die, and do more of like what really makes me happy. Like my son and I went out yesterday and collected acorns, and it's late in the season, so we were like picking through the leaves with the headlamps, at dusk. And then just like, okay, now we're gonna spend like hours cracking them all, and then we have to like mash them and rinse them once a day for the week. And like it's a busy week and it's one more thing we have to do. But I'm like, but that's like the thing I'm the most excited about.
Mm, mhm, hmm. Beautiful. It's like the simple things that bring the most joy and bring the most connection, and why we're here. I find that constantly in my own motherhood journey. It's like no one's going to remember all of the long list of external things we do, but like our time with our children and getting to spend those sweet moments of presence and being with them in nature. It's like that's the jewel, that's the gift. That's why we do what we do, to be able to have those times with them. And so to create more of it and to value it more and to stop working so much just so we can do that, and just realize that they're right there all the time, just waiting for us to just show up and do the very thing that we're like having to do 10 other things before we do it. But it's right there. We can do it right now.
Yeah. So that's also like I do a lot of that of like I have a million to-do list, and then like presence breaks through in any degree that I can like notice, like presence is breaking through. Life is trying to find you in your, weird little bubble of have tos and shoulds. And I did have like a strong Zen foundation somewhere in there also. And I think like it's a really good thing because like it's kind of what I hear in this moment in the conversation. Is just like you just have to notice, or like when people are like, remember to remember,
And well, that's such a full circle story. And there's so much beauty in coming back to our roots. And the very thing that you grew up resisting or wanting to get away from is the very thing that you found the most at homeness at this chapter of your life. And it's so sweet when we have those starts and then get to come full circle to them. And also in that same line of, a full spectrum young adulthood is, I think, the need to get away from what we know and try everything else out, and then to come back, but from our own will and our own desire and choosing, and having all of the life experiences that we carried and put in our mochila, our backpack, to then come in a new way. And so I think that's really beautiful when we get to have that full circle moment.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know it's not like what you do, but I'm curious, like, if you were willing to share like a little nugget of like, how you grew up and like where you're at now, like the contrast of those. Cause I think that that conversation is one of the best ways that like helps me remember to trust the process when I'm like, oh, right, other people also like have these wild journeys from where they start to where we see them now.
Totally. I'd love to. I grew up in Sonoma County in Northern California, and I had a very natural upbringing in a lot of ways. And I had parents that were conscious enough to put me in Waldorf school. And so I had this really beautiful initiation into a schooling and way of learning that was very close to, my own understandings as an adult and how I want to raise my children. So in a lot of ways, there were some similarities. My upbringing was, very suburban, and in a very interesting part of the world where there is a lot of consciousness and also a lot of sameness. And I ended up actually pushing back and asking my parents to put me in public school and put me in normal school because I wanted to be normal. And I felt like this alternative form of education was just isolating me more. And I always felt this really strong desire to be like everyone else. And so I ended up leaving that experience and going into more public school and more mainstream life. And I think that forever my whole learning experience in my childhood was forever, shaped by those initial years in Waldorf and in that style of learning and education. But I ended up taking the route of academia and feeling like I wanted to pave my way and accomplish things and find success. But my life changed when I found myself at UCLA on a full ride scholarship, and then I met plant medicine for the first time. And so it was very quick that I kind of started recognizing that I wasn't feeling happy and fulfilled, and my journey took the path of alternative study once again. So that was the journey that I took back to spirit. And I think it's really beautiful because in a lot of ways, to the best of my parents' ability, they were pushing me towards that. But I also kind of had to go on my own journey before I came back to it. And so now I am here back in Northern California at this moment, although I spend the majority of my year in South America and Colombia and Costa Rica. But I'm here and raising my child, and here I am wanting to do a lot of the same things that my parents did with me. And so it's like this beautiful return and valuing the gems and the gifts that were given to me in my childhood, and then getting to see them from a whole new source of life experience and self-discovery. And I think that my journey for healing was necessary because it catapulted me to find the tools and the resources to fill in the missing pieces. Because I think that one of the reasons I was not fully relating and feeling, um, like that it was the right place for me in that initial upbringing was because there were pieces missing that I had to go and recover in my own healing journey to be able to make sense of what it means to live with nature. And the biggest thing I could name is that there wasn't coherence in my own family unit and in my childhood and all around me. So even if there were these beautiful things being shown to me and given to me, I couldn't understand them because it wasn't being internalized.
When you say that, because I'm like, I don't know anybody that couldn't be like, oh, amen, sister, like to that, like what, like I've heard different versions of that from so many people. It's like they had this beautiful things that were part of their upbringing, but they couldn't really digest it because it wasn't being embodied,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's like I even wonder if that's our generation's job, it's like
Mm-hmm.
the to embody the things more deeply than
Mm-hmm.
they've been, because a lot of things were like, illegal to practice openly, prevented from being spread in community. And so it for a long time, it was like you put that in a bag and you carry that bag forever, never lose the bag. What do we do with it? What's in the bag? Just whatever, just don't lose it. And don't show it to too many people either. Like it wasn't actually like allowed or safe or possible to embody them, and it's easy to forget that. So I know that it depends where you live in the world. So in a way, sometimes it feels like when there's, active genocides happening right now, it feels like distasteful or something to be like, now is the time to shine your light and share your gifts. But, I actually do think on a certain level, like it highlights that if you are experiencing some degree of personal freedom, then you have a responsibility to like, you know, shine your light, blast your gifts, embody the thing, like, cook the food, speak the language, wear the clothes, because some people can't. So, some people would be like, oh, I can't do this because other people can't. And I'm going to like be in solidarity. And, that's whatever feels authentic to you is what you need to do. But I think it's equally valid to say, like, I'm going to wear these garments for all of my ancestors who couldn't, and all of your ancestors who can't wear theirs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, and I love it. It's like we are the generation of calling bullshit, and really just like naming where there is lack of coherence. And so I think there's like this a lot of power and beauty in being able to see where there's dissonance and being able to come into this place of embodiment, like you said. And so it's really a beautiful time to be living, and even with everything that is happening at this time in the collective consciousness and for humanity, I am a firm believer that the path of light always wins. And by walking and shining our light brighter, we are illuminating the path for others and helping others to walk the path with us. And so my prayer is always to be in prayer and to
Mm.
choose prayer. And I think, like, of course, awareness and humbleness to the realities of what is happening in the world is important for consciousness and for truth to be shown and to shed light on truth, but to not dim your light because the light is being challenged. Rather, this is the moment to shine brighter and to step up into greater service. And that's not from a place of like, you know, whatever, the ego or anything like that. It's truly from this place of like service, and this place of really praying for the collective consciousness to wake up and to remember. And because it is time and we are living in this like incredible moment in humanity's consciousness. And of course, the darkness is rearing its head brighter than ever, but so is the light. And the moment that we choose to feed the darkness and go into that hole of despair, we lose the flame that we are literally cultivating to light the way. So I always feel like, even if people say that, prayer is like circumventing or it's not enough, I feel like it's important to be vigilant with our thoughts at this time, and to really recognize, like, if you're shitting on someone for praying, like, where are your thoughts? Where's your
Yeah.
vibration if you're like tearing someone down for choosing prayer and choosing hope?
And also, like, not to assume that because someone is praying fiercely every day that they're not doing other things, you know? Like, a lot of assumptions get made about, like, when you say, like, that I'm praying for this or that. Like, then I feel like often what gets heard is that you're only praying and that you're like not doing aligned action also. I mean, it's like, I love this phrase. I don't know what group that it would have come from in this way, but I think I heard it from Jyoti. That's the woman who had the vision for the 13 Indigenous Grandmothers Council. And so she could have heard it from any one of these grandmothers, but just this idea of standing behind your prayer. So it's
Mhm.
like you pray when that's what's coming out of you, like if you're being present and you're a person where like prayer is one of the arts that you carry or practice, then prayer happens, and it happens a lot. But then the idea that like it doesn't end there, that like when you pray, maybe you're like initiating something and you're sending out this like arrow or call, but then you're almost like responsible or accountable to that. It's like if you asked for support with this thing, then like you need to show up and um do what you can to
Mhm.
meet spirit halfway, and that's how you really facilitate or lubricate the coming about. It's not wish fulfillment,
Mhm. Co-creation, 100%. So tell us about your co-creation with the apprenticeship and share with us what you got going on over there.
It's called Medicine Mandala, and that it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a mandala of the most medicinal things that I've found for um I would definitely say surviving embodiment at this point. That it's just getting stranger and stranger to be here, and the sort of like amount of like seemingly opposite things that we need to resolve and whatnot. So, in a way, it's kind of like if you didn't enjoy school, or you have some anger about like the amount of things you were not taught, it's like my answer to those kinds of feelings of like things that I feel that all women um, need to know. Is that like presuming to know something? But just where I'm like, I can't believe they don't teach this anymore. They used to, we all used to in all of our cultures. So it's sort of shifts and change, because I am a shapeshifter and I am a time traveler. And I've always said that the purpose was to bring the medicine that was most needed in these times. And these times are different than they were 7 years ago when we started. So it's sort of built into it that there's the curriculum, and it's like traditional nutrition, folk herbalism, and some somatic practices, let's say, as like the overarching category, that those things are always going to be there. But who teaches them has shifted a lot over the years. Like I used to teach a lot more myself. I just be like, I learned this. I'm a teacher. I can teach too. And so I will. And then I really learned like just trying to figure out how to make the medicine like more digestible is like, I might not be the most appropriate person to share certain things, or there just might be someone who's better, where like the person sharing it is the medicine, like really embracing. In the beginning, I wanted it to be like more absolute, just like this is something that will help everybody. And now I'm much more interested in the relative. And so, sometimes it's reparative to like, so I don't actually believe like you must be from India to teach yoga, but we've all learned so much yoga from white people. It can be feel pretty radical and reparative and restorative to this lineage, and like, paying our respects to the lineage to seek out somebody who is has that information like encoded in their DNA, So like these kind of shifts where I'm like, okay, it's like the information and then who's sharing it. And what is most needed to be seen or experienced right now, in this like moment. So just trying to make a lot of space for that. And I think in the beginning also we were wanting like this idea of like we want to take people all the way. We want to have a program where like wherever you step on the canoe, let's say, that everybody gets to the destination, and it's the same destination for everybody, and it's all the way, it's like the heart of heaven. And just sort of realizing there's something kind of heroic about that, and that you can't really I had a dream that was like about like having a group of women that were all pregnant and trying to have them like all give birth at the same time, and how that was almost like an act of violence, and so it's like I really just like keep kind of softening and softening and softening around like how it unfolds. So the curriculum's still the same, but just kind of saying, you know what, like if you get on the canoe and it moves you to a slightly different place than where you're at, that's great. And if you need to get off for like a few years and then get back on and keep going, that's fine too. Like allowing for everybody to develop on nature's timeline. But I do hope for it to be like a vehicle for evolutionary energy. And it has kind of shifted over time, or more towards just like really being a women's coming of age ceremony, and just the year of learning the practices and the medicines and the tools, like in the context of like, now you have these things in your bundle, and this bundle has been given to you in like a really sacred, intentional way, and you have a responsibility to be the best person you can be, and you use these tools to keep yourself well. And just having a moment where you're like, I feel like an adult, like lots of people come even in their 50s who are like, I still feel like a child. Um, and so just providing what would have existed in all of our cultures is, even if it's like, better late than never, better late and in a, rainbow collage of people of all different ages and life experiences, than not having, a coming of age ceremony and not feeling initiated. So I just try to stay close with all the grandmothers that have taught me and ask lots of questions and share with them my ideas about like what I'm doing or what I think I'm doing or what I want to be doing, and make sure that it feels in integrity to me, and that I ask for people to check me like quite a bit, because who could really say that they know how to provide an effective initiation that will prepare a girl to live as a woman in a good way in the world in these times? Like, we don't know where we're going. So it's a wild ride, but I'm I know that it's the work that I'm here to be doing, and feel that that's reflected to me by the people that matter to me and that I respect. So that's a great blessing. It's yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, so Medicine Mandala, and it's in partially virtual and partially in person on your land.
Mhm. Yeah.
Awesome. And the next enrollment is in the springtime.
It's either going to be at Imbolc, which is February 2nd, or the spring equinox. So
Okay,
depending on,
cool.
how fast that baby wants to cook.
Beautiful. Amazing. Yeah, yeah. Well, we will definitely put the links to the Medicine Mandala page and to your website and to your Instagram pages as well. And yeah, get all of the good information out to our listeners. So if you're tuning in and you resonated with Yaya Erin's medicine and her wisdom, definitely urge you to check out her program and this beautiful medicine mandala offering that she is in service to. And yeah, with that, I just really want to thank you so much for your time, for coming onto the show and sharing this time together. It's so sweet to connect and to get to talk about these important parts of the path, of the journey, and reflect to one another in this space. It feels really, really good. And just really sending you a lot of blessings and prayers and honoring your path and your family and everything that you are carrying and tending to on your altar at this time. And yeah, just opening the space for you to share any final words that you might feel called to share with our listeners before we close.
Well, we didn't really touch on it, but when you were sharing about your life and you were saying, then plant medicine happened, and like, everything changed. And I do just feel like the questions of like the difficulties or the darkness or the challenges in the world, it's like, I don't actually believe that it is possible to make sense of all of this without the help of the plants. They're our ancestors. They've been here longer. They've seen all of these different cycles. They're like here to help us work it out, um, and, transcend some of these more primal urges and pettiness, and come into more of our potential. And, you know, there's the herbal studies and there's the entheogenic plants, but I don't think that we have to like make the compartments that we do. I think that all plants can help evolve and decalcify our consciousness, and are just such a grace. And I'm so grateful. And just, kind of stating it and acknowledging it, it's been a huge part of my path. And I just hope that, anybody listening, probably anybody listening to your podcast, does have a relationship with the plants already, but just like I put all my faith for our like humanity in the plants, and like hope that the people who are hearing the call but haven't taken those steps on that journey yet, like are supported in taking those next steps and moving toward that and trusting that there's something there for them that is gonna help make sense of it all. Yeah.
Beautiful prayer. Thank you so much. Many blessings to you and to all that are here with us today. On behalf of the Four Visions family, we want to thank you for listening to our podcast. We hope you have enjoyed this conversation and have gained seeds of wisdom that will nourish your spiritual path. If you have a moment, please leave us a review, as this helps us to reach more people. For more resources and information about the plant path, and for the highest quality spiritual tools and botanicals, please visit us at fourvisions.com. We are grateful for your support and look forward to continuing this journey with you all. Until next time.